Hey, have you ever found yourself scrolling through endless NAS options, wondering if you're really getting the speed and capacity you need for both work and play? I was in that exact spot a few weeks ago, trying to figure out whether a high-end all-flash NAS made sense for my small creative studio. I didn't want to waste money on a beast that would sit idle, but I also didn't want to end up with a sluggish box that would choke when I tried to edit 4K footage straight from the network. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Asustor DiscTech 24TB bundle caught my eye because it's packaged as a complete solution: a Flashstor 6 chassis, 6 4TB NVMe M.2 SSDs, 8GB of RAM, and dual 2.5 GB ports. On paper, that sounds like a lot of power, but the real question is how that power translates into everyday workflow, and whether the price tag is justified for a home or small business environment. First off, let's talk about who actually benefits from an all-flash NAS like this. If you're a video editor, a photographer, or a graphic designer who frequently moves multi-gigabyte files between workstations, the speed advantage of SSDs over traditional spinning drives is immediate. The NVMe modules in this unit can deliver read/write rates well beyond what a 2.5 GB network can saturate, meaning you'll see the full benefit of those fast drives when you copy a 100 GB project folder from one PC to another. For me, that meant being able to pull raw footage from the NAS and start editing without a noticeable lag, something that would be frustrating on a slower system. Similarly, a small business that runs a handful of virtual machines or containerized services can treat the NAS as a fast shared data store. The built-in RAID options let you set up redundancy without sacrificing much of that speed, so even if a single SSD dies, the array can keep the data intact. In that scenario, the ultra-fast all-flash storage claim isn't just marketing fluff, it becomes a practical safety net, especially when your client projects have tight deadlines. Now, if you're a typical home user who stores movies, music, and occasional photos, the story changes. You probably already have a decent external hard drive that can hold a few terabytes, and your internet connection is likely the bottleneck when streaming to multiple devices. In that case, the raw speed of 6 NVMe drives is overkill. You'd still benefit from the RAID protection, but the extra performance will mostly sit idle. The price of a fully loaded 24TB SSD bundle can quickly outpace the value you actually extract from it. Let's dig into the practical strengths that set this NAS apart. The first thing I noticed after plugging it into my network was how quickly the shared folders appeared on my two Windows PCs and my MacBook. The dual 2.5 GB ports let you aggregate them for a 5 gigabits per second link if you have a switch that supports it, and even without aggregation, the single 2.5 GB connection already feels snappy compared to the 1 GB networks most people still use. When I transferred a 50 GB video archive between the NAS and my workstation, the transfer completed in roughly 6 minutes, an impressive number that would have taken double that time on a conventional SATA-based NAS. Another practical win is the fact that the SSDs are already installed and pre-configured. You don't need to open the chassis, insert drives, or worry about firmware compatibility. For anyone who isn't comfortable opening a case, this turnkey approach eliminates a common pain point. The 8 GB of RAM, while not massive, is sufficient for most file-sharing workloads and even for running a few Docker containers directly on the NAS. I set up a small Plex server on it, and streaming 1080p content to a couple of devices was completely smooth, no buffering, no stutters. On the flip side, there are a few practical weaknesses worth mentioning. First, the power draw is higher than a typical 3-bay HDD NAS. 6 active NVMe drives consume a noticeable amount of electricity, and while the unit does have a fan for cooling, you'll hear it spin up when the drives hit sustained writes. If you're planning to keep the NAS running 24/7, the operating cost will be higher than an HDD-based system. Second, the physical size of the Flashstor 6 is larger than a compact 2-bay box, so it won't tuck neatly onto a crowded desk. You'll need a dedicated shelf or a rack space, which might be a consideration for a home office with limited real estate. Another nuance that could be a deal-breaker for some is the lack of expandable drive bays. The chassis ships with 6 4TB M.2 SSDs, totaling 24 terabytes of raw capacity, but you can add more drives later. If your storage needs grow beyond that even modestly, you'd have to replace the entire unit or look for a different chassis that supports additional drives. For a small studio that expects rapid data growth, this could limit long-term flexibility. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs that many product pages gloss over. The all-flash architecture gives you